Welcome to day 2 of the Sunflower Seams Zinnia Sew Along. Today we are going to be completing steps 1 through 16. Let's go ahead and get started. For step 1, you are going to take your front bodice main and your front bodice lining. Now just note that the bodice pieces for the front and the back are the same. So unless you have changed fabrics for the front and the back, it doesn't really matter which one's which at this point in time. So lay your bodice main with the right side of the fabric facing up and take your front bodice lining and lay it on top of your front bodice main with the right sides of the fabric touching. You will want to align the arm skies and the neckline. Pin or clip the neckline. Now you will sew using 3/8 inch seam allowance across the top of the neckline. Trim away 1/2 of the seam allowance along the neckline. Flip the bodice front right side out and press. Repeat those steps for the back bodice main and the back bodice lining. Once you have completed both the bodice front and the bodice back, open up your bodice front with the right sides of the lining and the main facing up. Now lay the back bodice main on top of the front bodice main, lining up the arm skies and the neckline. Do the same thing for the lining. Pin along one side of the side seams. Now sew the front main and the back main together at the side seams and repeat for the front and back lining side seam. The next step will to be press the side seams open flat on both the main and the lining bodice pieces. Fold your bodice pieces back with the right sides of the fabric facing out. Next, you will want to top stitch along the back neckline and the front neckline. Once that is completed, you will then want to stitch in the ditch in the side seams, going through the main and the lining bodice pieces. Once that is complete, you will want to either serge or zigzag stitch your arm skies. If you choose to serge, you will want to make sure that you do not cut off any of the arm sky. Once that is complete, you will want to measure 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom raw edge of your bodice piece. Take your water washable pin and draw a line across the entire bodice pieces along the front and back. This line will become your stop sewing line when we start shearing. Now it is time to replace your all-purpose thread bobbin with your elastic thread bobbin. It is very important to remember to leave that nice tail. At this point, it is now time to start shearing. As a reminder, you will want to try a test piece of fabric before you start on your Zinnia bodice. If you have trouble getting your machine to shear, be sure to check out the tips found in the Zinnia tutorial, as well as the blog posts found on the Sunflower Seams website. If that still doesn't help solve your problems, be sure to check out the Sew Along group and the Sunflower Seams Sewing group, and feel free to ask questions so that we can all try to help you the best way that we can. Once you are ready to start shearing, you are going to start on the front bodice. We are going to start at the top. You will begin shearing 1/4 away from the top of the neckline. You will sew across the front of the bodice and stop 1/4 of an inch away from the arm side. You will then lift your presser foot up, pivot your Zinnia bodice, and sew 1/4 of an inch down. You will then lift your presser foot back up, pivot your bodice once more, and sew across 1/4 of an inch away from the previously sheared line. You will continue this process all the way down the bodice. Once you reach a point that the arm side is no longer in the way, you will then sew across the front, across the side seam, and across the back. You will then pivot at the side seams all the way down to your stop shearing line. Your presser foot is an excellent guide to making these 1/4 inch rows. However, you are more than welcome to use your water washable pin and make lines for each individual row. Once you have reached the stop shearing line, you will then want to come back up to finish the back of your bodice. You will want to start 1/4 of an inch away from the side arm sky and shear 1/4 of an inch away from the last row created on the back bodice. You will continue shearing and pivoting once you reach each arm side. Continue until you've reached 1/4 of an inch away from the top of the back bodice. Once you have finished shearing, you will want to give your bodice a really good iron and steaming. This will help your elastic thread just come back together and really make your shearing nice and tight. Fold your Zinnia bodice in half with the lining side of your bodice touching. Line up the side seams and pin. At this point, we are going to be creating a French seam. Once you're done pinning, you will sew using 1/4 seam allowance along the raw edge of the side seam. Trim away 1/2 of your seam allowance from your side seam and iron the seam flat. Turn the bodice inside out and fold at the side seam that has the raw edge. You want to fold it right along the seam and pin if needed. You will now sew from the edge using 1/4 inch seam allowance. This will enclose the raw edge that we have exposed on the main side of the bodice without leaving any raw edges on the side. You have now completed day 2 of the Zinnia Sew Along. Hopefully you were able to share without any hiccups. However, if you hit any roadblocks and you still need help, feel free to contact us in the Sew Along group or the Sunflower Seams Sewing group. We would love to help you so that you can have as successful of a Zinnia Sew Along as you possibly can. I cannot wait for tomorrow. We're going to work on our sleeves and attaching them. See you then.